For Wednesday, March 1st, 2017. Today we're going to devote the entire session, aside from a very brief moment at the start of it, to public input on the killer whale protection zone to support the recovery of the southern resident killer whales. We have a lot of people that want to speak. If we do the math, we are kind of needing to limit everybody's comments to 3 minutes. We'll see if we can roll in about 3.5-minute intervals, and I think that's going to work out with around 30 people that want to speak, and about 2 hours. I would like to remind everybody to do something I just forgot to do. Shut down your cell phone so they don't make any ruckus. And so I'd just like to remind everybody that as you come up, please speak into the microphone. Please give your name first. And it's going to be best if everybody address the Marine Resources Committee here, address us directly. We'd like to avoid you addressing each other. We'd like to avoid political and personal attacks. And I did bring my gavel today. I'm not afraid to use it. Chandler will be timing everybody, and she's got a beautiful little bell there. That will go off at 3 minutes, at which point you should either stop abruptly or finish your thought briefly. I'm going to open it up with something I think is very important. I've made a sort of decision here on my own. We're going to open up with Byron Rott, who's normally pushed off till the end and pushed off the end of the boat eventually. When it comes to time here, he's going to address salmon recovery briefly. I think it's an important issue for all of us, and this is a great venue to have him present at. And we're going to go in the order that everybody signed up. Everybody's going to be limited to 3 minutes. And I would ask Megan here to, she's asked if she could say something nice to the group, and I'd invite her to do so right now.
Well, Terry, in terms of when the Salmon Recovery Committee meets, you want to go through the formal committee opening and then...
I think we'll just allow Byron first spot on behalf of the salmon.
So I have a very quick comment, which is I want to remind everyone, a bit of perspective. Everyone in the room, I think, wants the orcas to thrive for a lot of different reasons, perhaps. But and the question before us, before NOAA, is just whether this proposed protection zone would noticeably help in that process, or to put it in really utilitarian terms, would it have enough benefits to the orca population to be worth whatever the cost might be. So we're already here to hear about the best available science and think about those costs and benefits. But if everyone can just remember, we're all on the same side. That's all.
Another friendly reminder, no direct side comments or anything like that. Let's everybody be polite and courteous, address the group, and right out of the gate here, we'll have Byron talk about salmon recovery briefly.
Good morning. So just so the folks in the audience know, I am the Salmon Recovery Coordinator for San Juan County, and that is your Salmon Recovery lead entity. And the MRC is the policy body, the Citizens Advisory Group for that, for the lead entity. What we are focused on here is Chinook recovery, which everyone knows is how important that is for orcas. And so I think we all agree that orcas need food. And right now the state legislature is deciding on this year's biennial budget. They have a really tough decision this biennium in terms of funding court-required improvements to education. And the salmon recovery budget comes out of the capital budget. after paying for all the state improvements to education, they'll have about somewhere between 200 and 350 million left in the capital budget for everything else. Salmon recovery could take up probably 200 million of that. So, and that includes building any building in the state that requires a capital budget. That's mental health. That's just a whole host of stuff that the legislature has to fund out of that remaining piece of the capital budget. What I'm hearing is that they're not hearing, the legislators are not hearing from their constituents that salmon recovery is important. And so squeaky wheels get the grease as far as that works. So I am not allowed to lobby, but I am allowed to inform, and so I'm informing you of this fact. And so they, however you, if you do feel like contacting them, picking up the phone and just calling their office is effective. www.leg.wa.gov is the state legislature website. You can find any of the legislators' addresses, phone numbers there. And Arnie, I think, has information if you wanted to ask him for more information, or you could ask me later. Simply, the three programs that fund salmon recovery in San Juan's are Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Program, the Salmon Recovery Funding Board, and Estuary Salmon Restoration Program. Those three are fund. There's lots of other salmon funds, but those are the three main ones in the San Juans. And what we're focused on here primarily is acquisition and restoration, secondly. So that's all I wanted to say. What we're really trying to do is recover both of these amazing organisms, salmon and orcas. They're inextricably linked. The recoveries are inextricably linked, and they're important. And thank you.
Thank you, Byron. We'll now move on to the citizen input session. We're
just a reminder about the submission to the NOAA.
Yes, just going to go over that. Thank you. In summary, we're convening this forum and gathering public comments for three reasons: to help formulate a response to the petition, to help inform San Juan County about public's comment on the petition, and to encourage San Juan County citizens to respond to NIMPS by writing and or on their public comment website for this matter. There is a electronic submission portal that's been set up. I would encourage anybody to use that portal. It's a little bit complicated for me to read out to you, but it is available. So I encourage anybody to use that. In summary, the National Marine Fisheries Service received a petition under the Administrative Procedure Act requesting that they use their authority under the Endangered Species Act and Marine Mammal Protection Act to establish a whale protection zone to support recovery of endangered southern resident killer whales. And there is also a link to the NOAA webpage on regulations on vessel effects. So with that, I'll invite our first speaker to speak, unless any of the rest of our group wants to interject anything.
Just wanted to address the fact that the recording of this proceeding and all of this input will be forwarded on to the NOAA as a public record.
Great, thank you. Who has the list right now?
You have it right here.
Oh, I have it right here.
You must have just turned the mic on.
Janet Thomas is our first speaker.
Thank you.
Oh, you're going to go there. Sorry.
Can I just move this? Does that work?
There's a button on it also.
Oh, thank you. It wasn't blue until you pushed it, honey. So thank you very much for your time and for all the work that you do for our county and our marine resources. My name is Janet Thomas. I've lived on the island for more than 25 years. Currently, I'm the San Juan County contact person for the Orca Relief Program, the coordinator for getting out the information. And it's complicated information. There's many questions and many discussions to be had. We got notice about this meeting only on late Friday. And so that really didn't give a great deal of time to generate the response that we would have liked to if we'd had a bit more time. We will be having meetings also in the county. So I did just want to say that. During my time on the island, I was manager of the county fair for 5 years in the 90s, and I was also superintendent of the county parks. And I was out in that job, in that capacity, when jet ski whale watching wanted to launch from the San Juan County Park. And I looked at my job description and I said, no, you can't. And the park board supported that. The county commissioners ultimately supported that. And that decision was supported by a very lengthy and very interesting decision by the Washington State Supreme Court. And so consequently, our small county, by banning jet skis in county waters, set a precedent whereby national parks across the country can ban jet skis in lakes. The Florida Everglades could ban jet skis from their waters. So this little county did a very, very big thing back in the 90s. And all in protection of the orca whales. That's how it started. So we've just lost Granny. And there's been gatherings to honor her life. And my feeling about that is that, and this is feeling, what motivated me to get this position was feeling, was having experienced so many years of hearing the orca whales on the west side. And that was how I knew they were there. And going over and over and spending many, many hours sitting on the banks of the shores of the west side and engaging with the whales, something that I am personally no longer able to do because it's too painful. It's too painful to see what they have to deal with in order to be in their core critical habitat. I've been sending out information for the last 5 or 6 months, accurate information. Some of it's very lengthy, but I do urge you to really look at it because the information is there. The petition that we submitted to NOAA includes 55 professional science papers. That was a really fast 3 minutes. Thank you. I have lots of information. Please contact me, and I would be really happy to give it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Scott West.
Good morning. As he said, I am Scott West. I'm the current Executive Director of Orca Relief Citizens Alliance. I've been with Orca Relief only a short time. Prior to my time at Orca Relief, I was with Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, where I fought illegal whaling in the Southern Ocean, fought dolphin slaughter in Taiji, Japan, and fought pilot whale slaughter in the Faroe Islands. Before that, I was a federal agent sending environmental criminals to jail. My long professional life has been one of fighting environmental assault and wildlife injustice. I'm here today to help the southern resident killer whales. I do not believe that I am among adversaries who wish to harm these whales, and I am not here to fight. There has been way too much fighting and drama around these orcas over the years, and it has done them no good. We all want the same thing, a healthy and thriving population of southern residents. I am here with an open mind and an open heart, desperately wanting to save these orcas, and I am sure that I am not alone here in that desire. We are here to talk about a process. The petition we filed is not meant to be an end, but a beginning. We wanted to get the conservation going to address the threats facing the southern residents and to initiate the best possible solutions. Perhaps it could have been structured differently, but the point is that we are now talking and we now have the opportunity for that process. Since NOAA last attempted to establish a refuge here and was shut down, the southern resident population has continued to decline. There are now believed to be only 78 individuals alive. Of these, few are of reproductive age. The southern residents are on the cusp of imminent extinction. We are on the edge of the abyss. NOAA has identified 3 major threats to southern resident recovery. Just to be clear, threat means something that causes decline. Shortage of their food, toxin pollutants in their environments, and noise and harassment from vessels. We could choose to cherry-pick the NOAA science to avoid taking necessary action, or we could choose to do everything possible to save the southern residents from extinction. I believe the most serious threat facing the southern residents is a catastrophic oil spill in the Salish Sea. It looks like there will soon be more oil tanker traffic in the sea. This is a ticking bomb, and we all have to work together to ensure that the bomb does not detonate. The shortage of salmon is the second most significant threat facing the southern residents, and more salmon are truly needed. But when will that happen? Dams have to come down. Open pen farming of Atlantic salmon has to end. Upstream habitat restoration has to occur. There is no quick or easy solution here. NOAA is working hard on salmon recovery in Canada and the United States, but 100 years of neglect and damage cannot be undone overnight. Do the southern residents have the luxury of our waiting? Are we going to take that risk? We cannot stop working towards salmon recovery, but we can do more than one thing at a time. The third most significant threat is motorized vessel noise and harassment. There is a lot of good science which establishes that noise is a serious problem. Some 55 papers are referenced in the petition. The recent film, Sonic Sea, drives home that point. The southern residents' habitat is a noisy place. They have managed to adapt somewhat to the noise. But if I could just say, if we have suggested the wrong place for the zone, then perhaps the whale watch industry and the folks out there that know these whales probably better than anyone else can suggest a better location. The Sound Watch reports tell an interesting story. Thank you.
Thank you. Russ Mullins?
Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Russ Mullins. I'm a sergeant with Washington State Fish and Wildlife Police. I've been working in San Juan County for about 20 years now, and I supervise the detachment of 7 to 8 officers that also predominantly work here in the county. I've been engaged with orca protection for about 15 years. I drafted the original state RCW for orca protection and written several grants that have amounted to about $2 million over 6 years, specifically for orca protection. So what we've managed to accomplish is about 50 dedicated patrols with the whales at targeted times in the summer in an effort to reduce vessel interaction. And the statistics that have come out from Sound Watch is that there is a change in behavior when marked patrol vessels are present. So my purpose here today is basically to, one, support this effort. We're all on the same page. And second, provide some law enforcement perspective on what can work and the best way to make things stick, because we don't want to end up with a regulation that's ineffective after all the effort. So essentially, NOAA does not have a regulatory presence on southern resident killer whales on a day-to-day basis. Literally no prosecutions for many years. We do that work locally in local courts. It has led to successful prosecutions. So when we talk about the no-go zone, there's enforcement issues regarding what if the whales are somewhere else? What if they're outside and offshore? There's no protection, but it's still unlawful to be there. So I worry about getting calls from people on the west side saying, hey, there's people in the zone when the whales are up north or anywhere else outside that zone. Technically, it would be illegal to be there. There's lots of regulatory issues regarding transit through a no-go zone. So I'm working with our people in Olympia to consider some alternatives. And right now, we're leaning towards a bubble, a go-slow bubble around a given southern resident, something we can adapt potentially into the RCW as an element, and then we would have that local opportunity to enforce. So long history of working with NGOs and with the whale watching industry. We want to kind of bring everybody together and find something that is tolerable and enforceable at the same time. So certainly a resource if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kyle. And I would like to remind everybody we have the option of sitting in the luxury booth here or standing at the podium to present. Kyle, you could sit here if you'd like, or the podium.
Too luxurious.
Okay.
Too much. Unless it's easier so you guys don't have to crane your heads. Poor Phil up here. Yeah. Do that. I'll give him a second to sit down. Thanks. So far away. Good morning. My name is Kyle Loring, and I'm the staff attorney with Friends of the San Juans. And I want to start by thanking the Marine Resources Committee for hosting this session today, and to recommend that the MRC recommend to the County Council. I know the chain of command needs to be followed. That the MRC continue to conduct this effort, that the MRC and the county support this petition to open this conversation about a whale protection zone, and so that it can work on the details to figure out just what that would look like, where it could be, what time it would operate, which vessels would go where, under what rules. So we certainly support this effort to move forward. I just submitted a comment letter. I sent it electronically too, in case that's easier at some point. But I'm just going to very briefly touch on the comments that I make there and provide some support. So Friends supports this conversation to have a whale protection zone, supports the idea of a whale protection zone. And in fact, it's been on the table now, this idea, since at least 2008. So the federal agencies, NOAA has been talking about it since then. It was identified in the recovery plan for the southern resident killer whales as a possible option. It hasn't been pursued. Not a lot has been done from that recovery plan to recover the whales. And as you heard earlier, there are multiple threats. Salmon is certainly a threat, the lack of salmon. Contaminants are a threat, and the threat of an oil spill. But noise is also a threat to the whales, and the noise is continuing out there, and also vessel disturbance generally. There's even some question about the amount of exhaust and the fumes and the impact that might have as well. I just received a study on that today. I haven't had a chance to take a look, but I think it should be part of the conversation as well. So I've attached to our comment letter some literature, and there was one study. It was from data that is about from the late 2000s, I think, and it shows, they did their own study, and they also looked at previous studies, and they show that this area on the southwest side of San Juan Island historically has been used for feeding, and it has persisted for decades. It's an area where the whales have come to feed. Now, you'll probably hear that the whales aren't feeding in the same way there. That's at least what I've heard. I've tried to speak with as many people as I can about this, that they're not necessarily feeding in the same way there at this point. But that is due to many factors, and it's possible that noise is a factor. The literature suggests that. Certainly the literature suggests that the lack of salmon is a factor. So you'll hear as well, I think, that this effort shouldn't be undertaken because we need to focus on the salmon. But those are different issues. And NOAA does have an entire wing of people who are working on salmon recovery. It sounds like we need to let them know that, and our legislators know that this is a concern for us, so they take action on that. But that's not a distraction from vessel issues. These are separate things that both need to be addressed, absolutely. And so this is the opportunity here to work on the vessel issues. Here, let me read a quick quote from one of those studies. I also quoted it in our comment letter. But again, you may hear that the salmon are critical and the southwest side of San Juan Island is not the big issue. But here's what Noren and Hauser said, and I'll wrap up with this and maybe try to squeeze in a couple more words. And basically, they say that feeding areas may be important to protect, not only because of the impact on this behavior by vessels, but also because these killer whales may be food limited. They may already not have enough food. Because southern residents could be in an energy deficient state due to reduced prey availability or quality, it may also be important to protect resting areas that are important for minimizing energy expenditure. So this is that kind of area over there on the southwest side of San Juan Island. The details need to be worked out. The gavel has come out. I thank you for your time, and I encourage the MRC to help move this forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on our list is Janet Alderton.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. I live on Orcas Island, and I'm a retired biologist. And I'm here to speak in favor of an orca protection zone because you can't ascribe an exact impact of each of these factors, the food, the pollutants, and the vessel interaction. But the resting zone, I think the orcas are so smart, they'll probably figure out they'll have a place where they can rest and be less disturbed. And also the impacts might not be additive, so the food and the pollutants and the vessel impacts might not just be discrete additive impacts, but they could be they could have a multiplier effect. So I think it's worthwhile trying this out for sure. As a scientist, I'm always looking to try something out and see what the result is. And maybe it would have a much larger impact than people might just presume from looking at additive impacts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on our list is Emily Kamen.
I'm Emily Guyman, and thank you for this opportunity for this meeting. I've lived here over 40 years, and I'm not a scientist, so I'm just speaking as someone who loves the islands like we all do. Two thoughts occurred to me this morning. One, we can't directly do anything about polar bears in the Arctic or elephants in Africa, but we can do something about our orcas. And to me, from the evidence that I've read and that is being presented, a whale protection zone seems to make a great deal of sense. The second point I'd like to make is I think so many people that go out on whale watch boats just love being on a boat. They're interested in whales, but most are from inland parts of our country. They've never been on a boat in the ocean. They love to go out. They love to hear a naturalist talk about the whales and the seals that we used to be under glaciers and so forth. And I think naturalists can do a wonderful job, as they do, in educating people about the need to take care of our resources and what exists in the oceans. So, thank you.
Thank you. Tina Whitman.
Alrighty. Again, thanks for the opportunity. It's great that you're hosting this meeting. I'm Tina Whitman. I live on Orcas. I've been there for 16 years. I also work for Friends of the San Juans, and I spend almost every day working on sort of food webs and shorelines and the salmon piece of this puzzle. And I was also on the Marine Resources Committee for 8 years, including when the last time this whale protection zone came around. And I wanted to start with a little bit of history and just sort of reminding folks, and maybe everyone doesn't know this, but our MRC was the first of 7 Marine Resources Committees in the state, and we were an alternative to a national marine sanctuary that was proposed for our area. And our community came together and said, go away federal government, but at the same time, and I think that's the part that people remember, we also said, we want to come up with a local solution and craft it ourselves, but we're working towards the same end, right? We're all, and I think that people have made that point today. We're all working towards the same end. But I think we forget, and we sort of do that goodbye federal government. But what that means is that we have the responsibility of achieving those same goals. Other history. So orca and their prey are both listed under the Endangered Species Act. So this is sort of a dire, this isn't a maybe someday we'll get around to thinking about this. The time I would argue is long past to be having these conversations. And again, like other folks have said, there's not going to be a single solution. I hear a lot of conversation as soon as you start talking protection zones. People immediately start talking about the need for more salmon. And again, that is so important. But the noise is part of the issues. It's been well documented, and it's also related to the food. If you're being disturbed, then you're not as successful hunting. So the science does support this, but this is a social decision, right? This is not going to be, we can argue about the science all day long, but this is a social decision about what our community is willing to do. And do I want the 4 Snake River dams to come down? Yeah. And you know what? There's people in Idaho that we're asking to sacrifice a lot in their own community to take down those dams. What are we willing to do? And as someone else also said, this is something we do have control over. Let's try it. Is it perfect? Is it the only thing that's needed? No, but it's something that this community does have control over, and I really hope that we continue to work and really do what we can to help these whales. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Goodremont?
Good morning. Thanks for hosting this meeting. I didn't prepare a lot of comments because I wasn't sure how much time we would have, so beg your pardon. This is kind of on the fly. I'm going to respond to sort of the feeling in the room. A lot of people have said that I like the way the meeting has started because I agree that we all want to recover southern resident killer whales. I'm in the whale watch industry. I own a whale watch company. I've represented our industry as the Pacific Whale Watch Association president for 4 years. I feel like I know these issues pretty well. And I think, like the petitioners, I'm tired of there not being concrete action to recover these whales. These whales were listed in 2006 as endangered, and we have the same number of whales that we did 11 years ago. So this mandate, this ESA listing is not helping the whales. I think that as a group, our first step should be not continuing to scapegoat vessel effects and vessel traffic, which was addressed in the 2009 federal rulemaking. There's been no best available science that has come out since that 2011 federal rulemaking to change for NOAA to address vessel effects again. Is what I would argue, and a lot of the best available science supports that. If anything, what's come out since 2011 is more great information showing that it's not simply the presence of vessels that causes the issue, it's the type of vessel, it's the speed of the vessel, it's the size of the vessel, and we're learning a lot about vessels and sound, and it seems like the best available science is supporting this idea that a go-slow zone as opposed to a no-go zone would be much better supported. And this concept of a go-slow zone as opposed to a no-go zone mitigates all these sound issues that we're talking about. Some of the issues that Kyle brought up. Data dating back all the way to 2006, 11-year-old data. A lot of the data that you'll find in the petitioner's work, the 55 studies that are often cited, it's a lot of old research. Yes, you've already heard that the whales don't use this proposed no-go zone as they once did. I find it a stretch to associate that with the presence of vessels. I hope that some of the data that we provided you in a position paper today, or you'll be provided with, shows that there's a lot of great best available science that I think you really need to dig into, and you'll see that the presence of the whales in these areas has very little to do with vessels. It has to do with prey availability. Thanks. I hope we continue this conversation.
Tim White?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Tim White. Decades ago, I cut my teeth in wildlife observation in Central Africa. I worked with Diane Fossey, who trained me in protection of the mountain gorillas there. I spent about 2.5 years working with gorillas and then later in Liberia rehabilitating chimpanzees back to their native environment. We're in a crisis here with these creatures. We counted 273 mountain gorillas in 1976, 77 in Central Africa. They were being squeezed by pyrethrum farmers, wanted to take another 500 meters of altitude around the parks. 3 countries competing over jurisdiction, Rwanda, Zaire, and Uganda. We had low birth rates. Tourist industry was just beginning to get going. Diane was trying to keep 3 groups of gorillas, 3 groups from being visited every day by the biggest money earner that the government of Rwanda had developed. Honey poachers. There was some poaching for the African buffalo, meat poachers. Main thing I was doing was taking down snares that were being set for diker and bushbuck, and inadvertently taking gorillas. Digit, the famous gorilla, lost his fingers, called Digit, because he lost one in a snare trap. I'd just like to say, now, I've lived in San Juan 25 years. For the last 5 years, almost every day, I walked studying the foxes there in American camp. And I watched the dispersion of these once beautiful clusters of the whales going by, and hearing them in groups, and the flotilla of boats pushing them up and down, up and down. But I want to emphasize, this is a crisis. Everything that we can do, we're down to less than 100 animals. I mean, gorillas are, iconic, and so are orcas. But what worked in Rwanda, why there are still gorillas, because it was the local people that got on board and saw that this is something that they can do. In small organizations, groups like yours, that's why there are still some gorillas. They're still at risk. Population is going like this. But because we are in a crisis, we have to err on the side of protection. And I would prefer to, we use this term regulation, I use the term protection. Please.
Thank you. Jeff Friedman?
Thank you. I'm Jeff Friedman. I own a whale watching company on the island. I'm also the current president of the Pacific Whale Watch Association. Thank you for hosting this meeting, and thank you for pointing out that we are all on the same side of this. We, as whale watch operators, share the sentiment and the frustration and the concern that everybody in this room is feeling, that we are in a very critical time for the southern resident killer whales. We see this every day on the water as educators. We feel, we see what's going on with this population. We see it in the eyes and the hearts of the people that we're educating what is going on here. And we agree this is a time for to take very bold action. I want to share a little bit. We're a little bit disheartened and concerned at the direction of what we're talking about with bold action. I'm going to share just a little bit of anecdotal information. We used to tell people that peak whale watching season was May through September, and it used to be about the southern resident killer whales. We're now telling people peak whale watching season is July through September. If you look at the month of May, the southern resident killer whales are almost non-existent in the month of May in this core habitat, and it is all tied to the decline of the Fraser River spring salmon runs. They will go wherever there is food. We have historical anecdotal evidence of the whales, of the southern residents being in these waters, navigating through hundreds of miles and thousands of fishing boats, and they still came back to feed. These were the days where they were shot at and seal bombed, and they still came in here. So we want to really focus, and I think everybody's in agreement, salmon is the #1 issue. And if we're going to talk about the precautionary principle and saying, hey, we should be doing everything we can, well, that's a wonderful thing when you have infinite time and infinite budgets. But NOAA and the federal government that is dealing with orca and salmon recovery, I think they have a limited budget, and if you look at what may be coming, I think those budgets may be shrinking. And so if we're going to do what we can, we have to be very smart and very targeted. One of the things that we hear a lot of agreement about is, and the science supports, that vessel speed is a primary factor in the sound that reaches the whales. There was a study that came out in late 2015 that actually measured the sound that the whales were receiving, and it showed that vessel speed is the primary factor. If we want to address vessel effects again, like we did in 2011, I think there's widespread agreement, and as an association, we have a slow-go zone within a half a mile of the whales. Key ingredient, the whales have to be in a protection zone for it to be effective. Let's put a slow-go zone around the whales wherever they go. Let's get a wide agreement on that, get it done, and let's pour everything we have into salmon recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
First and foremost, good morning. Thank you for having us, and thank you for allowing this discussion of salmon recovery, orca recovery, and generally gathering people who care about these issues in one room. I really appreciate that. As you said, my name is Sarah McCullough. I'm the lead naturalist for San Juan Safaris, and I work for Brian Goodremont. I've been out here for 4 years now year-round, which I love, and this has totally become my home. My background is in wildlife management and conservation biology. That's my degree. So I spent a great deal of time throughout my undergraduate and then in research projects looking at how to manage wildlife. And I think that when you're looking at managing wildlife, considering an animal's biology is extraordinarily important. So looking at southern resident killer whales who move through an area at 100 miles per day in an incredibly dynamic way, having a geographically defined whale protection zone does not make sense. What makes sense is taking an area around them, as the PWWA has demonstrated, and creating a slow-go zone that's totally dictated by the whale's movement. To me, having an area that represents less than 1% of an animal's critical habitat, of their core habitat, as shown by NOAA and defined by NOAA's research, doesn't necessarily make sense in the long-term recovery of these animals. A little bit about the no-go zone. In 3.5 years now of working out on the boats, PWWA is one of the most respectful organizations out there in terms of implementing a voluntary slow-go zone, half mile around the whales. We've also advocated for showing private boaters out on the water how to be respectful around the whales. Oftentimes I've watched private boaters have Soundwatch point at whale watch boats and say, hey, use them as an example. I find it incredibly frustrating right now that our approach guidelines do not meet the needs of the whales. I believe that in looking at the way boats drive, it's aesthetically pleasing from land that at some points that but we have to think about it acoustically, that the whales, it's been shown in best available science that speed has every impact on these whales in terms of the noise that they receive. From the DTAG study that Julianne Hough released in 2016, she showed that speed rather than vessel size or anything else impacted the whales. I just urge the committee, when you're making your recommendation to the town council, to really think about answering the question that you put forth at the beginning. Would the whale protection zone have enough benefits? I think no. I think defining the area to protect around the whales and giving them the protection throughout our county rather than in the 1 mile off island would be beneficial. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfectly timed.
We have a second Sarah, who I'm not going to try and pronounce the last name.
Good morning. I have been observing, learning, and educating people about these whales for almost 20 years now, and I work with Jeff Friedman, the PWWA, but I've been a volunteer with many organizations as well. And my main concern with this protection zone, as Sarah put far better than I can, is that it's only 1% of their critical core habitat. We have two populations of killer whales in these waters. The southern residents are the ones that most people know about, but we have the big killer whales or transient killer whales as well. And in the past few years, they've been here more than the southern resident killer whales, but their population is increasing, and we have to look at the big difference there is that the prey type is marine mammals and they have enough to eat. I'm not saying that noise is not an issue, but if we're looking at the 1 mile no-go zone, we're ignoring the biggest source of acoustic pollution in Harrow Strait and in the core habitat of our southern resident killer whales, and that's going to be the tankers, freighters, and bulk carriers. And that was defined by Val Veers from Beam Reach, who also does the hydrophones on the west side. The numbers of tankers and freighters have the potential to increase exponentially with the approval of Kinder Morgan. And so I'm really worried about that more than the recreational vessels, which is what the petition addresses. And so I feel that a no-go zone is not the answer. We're looking at 1% of critical habitat, but we do need to look at where the southern residents are spending their time. We need to implicate a slow-go zone around them that is dynamic just as the whales are, that moves with them instead of just 1 mile off the west side, because that won't in fact take care of the acoustic pollution we're looking at so much from the bigger tankers and freighters that are by far more deafening than the smaller recreational vessels. Thank you.
Could we have your last name for the record, please?
Haisong Shimazu.
Thank you.
Could you repeat that name?
Haishang Shimazu. Beautiful. Ken Key, if I've got that pronounced right? Ray. Oh, excuse me. The R went up into the Sung.
Ken Ray with Spirit of Orca Whale Watch Company here in San Juan. Just a couple of thoughts. I'm a retired ocean towing captain, coastal tankers, tugboats, and injury forced my retirement. I wasn't ready to, but this is a wonderful way to spend retirement years, living here and being with the whales. I'm opposed to the whale protection zone, not in the sense of the name, but in the sense of the perimeter around the island, or on the west side. Orca Relief has claimed that their only target is whale watch vessels, and I like the way this meeting started, that we're all looking for the benefit of them. When our guests leave our vessels, they leave with a conservation message that they can take with them and know what to do. It's mentioned that vessel speed is a factor in noise. That's not just with the small boats, but with the big ships as well. Somehow we need to work them into the situation here. And the whales, when they are foraging, when they're hunting for food, they're not bunched up together like they used to be. They're spread out across the straits. The salmon are not bunched up. They're spread out. And it's my hope that we can all come together with a solution to bring more food, take the pressure off the whales, and continue on. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra?
Good morning. My name is Sandra Chalk, and I am a new resident of San Juan. Moved to the Northwest several years ago from the East Coast, and that's the perspective I'd like to present here, because on the East Coast I work closely with Mystic Seaport Museum in their educational work with informing people about all aspects of whales and whaling and the history of whaling. But it's the education that is so critical, and people are fascinated by whales. And they want to know and they want to understand. And the situation that you have here on San Juan Island is totally different from the East Coast, where whales are transient. They're moving up and down the coast along a particular path. Whale watch boats never know where they're going to be, and they obviously have their sonar and their ways of finding the whales so that the whale watch boats can entertain people, but they also educate people. And you have a very unique education situation here because your whales have a home here, and helping the people who are interested in whales understand that seems to me to tie in with what I'm hearing today, the need for slow boat speed around the whales wherever they are in the region, because things are changing here. I like the idea of a confined area where the whales can know that they have a quiet place, but from everything that I'm hearing here, the speed of boats is an equally important aspect of it. And then I want to go back to the need to educate the people who come here. The thousands of people who evidently come every summer and take the whale watch cruise or go to Lambkin Park, a home for this particular orca family, is the kind of emotional knowledge that can really mean something to people. And I think, for all the scientific facts that are important, you have an educational message here that is unique. And I'd like to see everybody, all the whale watch boats and people on the island, expanding that message as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Ansich?
Good morning. Thank you for having this meeting. I'm Peter Ansich, owner of San Juan Excursions, whale watching here in Friday Harbor. I am opposed to this petition, and I urge each and every one of you to oppose it as well, as it will not help the southern resident orcas. And I urge you to make those comments as well to the County Council to not support this petition. I believe it's quite important to hear from Ken Balcom. He couldn't be here today, but I do have a letter that I would like to read to you. I'm not as handsome or charismatic as Ken, but I'll give it a shot. Considering I've been conducting very detailed studies of the demographics, behavior, and distribution of the various ecotypes of killer whales that frequent San Juan County and the Salish Sea for the past 40 years, and considering that I have extensively researched the scientific and popular literature concerning marine mammals that has been published in the recent 200 years, I thought it might be useful as a resident of San Juan Island to provide my opinion on the petition to establish a whale protection zone for southern resident killer whales involving approximately 10 to 12 square miles, about 0.5% of the currently designated critical habitat of 2,560 square miles in San Juan County. Please note that the currently designated critical habitat referred to in parentheses above of these whales represents only a small portion of the 50,000 plus square miles of marine habitat that I have personally documented the southern resident killer whales to utilize in their year-round foraging for food, predominantly Chinook salmon. The petition grossly misrepresents the whale protection zone as their primary foraging and resting habitat during spring, summer, and autumn months. These highly mobile and charismatic top predators, particularly the most at-risk L-pod, travel as far as central California and southeast Alaska in search of a food supply that is predicted by fisheries experts to become extinct in this century due to human mismanagement. Furthermore, L-pod almost never comes in the whale protection zone in its entirety for the last decade because there are not enough salmon now to support them in the area. The Whale Protection Zone petition simply provides obfuscation of the main issue that our federal government officials and the Canadian government have abjectly failed to address for decades: ecology-based management versus economy-based management of natural resources. Recover salmon to recover southern resident killer whales. On its face, the Whale Protection Zone petition is absurd, and discussion of it is a colossal waste of time with respect to accomplishing anything of value to the survival of killer whales. It is a sound-good, feel-good, capricious exercise in lawyering and lobbying that cannot possibly be of benefit to the whales, and promulgation of a regulation pursuant thereto is of dubious constitutionality. I find it embarrassing that this county might be considering making a mountain out of a molehill in the name of these iconic creatures, and thereby subjecting us all to ridicule. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate you bringing Ken's letter. Barb?
Good morning. My name is Barb Leeming, and I am very much opposed to this. I think my husband and I opened a boat rental business a few years ago, and we have tried to tell all of our customers the rules as far as the whales. We've said, watch the whale watch boats. They know how far to stay back. And a couple things that I'm seeing that aren't being addressed is you have this no-go zone along the west side, but I can't tell you how many times I've been out there and seen the whales out as far as you can see. So what happens when a boat comes along and the whales are stretched out so far that where does the boat go? Where do they go? You know, off into Canadian waters. I mean, that might be fine for some, but not for others. And another issue I'm seeing is that isn't being addressed is the economic impact this could have on this community. The whale watch boats hire a lot of people. A lot of our high school kids, a lot of college kids come home to work on the boats. People come here, they want to learn about the whales, they want to see the whales. And you have a no-go zone, and suddenly, you know, there's going to be businesses that aren't going to be able to survive it. And that's going to have a ripple effect throughout this community. And in looking through the proposal that was sent to NOAA, I counted that the word may, as in maybe, was used 41 times in this document. And the word could was used 11 times. And that's an awful lot of maybes that could have such a huge impact on the economy. Like I said, it's going to have a ripple effect. Less people coming here, less people having jobs, less people spending money, affecting every aspect of our community, including our schools. So I think that's something that needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Reagan?
Good morning. My name is Tim Reagan. From 2000 to 2013, I was the first scientific program director and then the executive director for the U.S. Marine Mammal Commission back in Washington, D.C. I'm here to support the petition, and I, like others, would acknowledge your opening comments. I believe we all are interested in saving the killer whale. I do want to try to encourage you to take a very broad perspective on what you recommend going forward from here. You will hear a lot of debate and discussion about whether this issue is due to prey, as Ken just indicated in his letter, versus disturbance versus contaminants. The truth of the matter is, in a lot of these cases, we cannot distinguish exactly what causes what effect. We have good hypotheses, we get bits of information, but we will not be able to determine within probably decades, if then, what actually is responsible for each change that we see in killer whale behavior. I agree that cumulative effects are important, as Janet indicated. I also agree with Emily that when we look at problems like this, we have to figure out what is it that we can affect quickly and effectively, and what can we not change necessarily in time. This problem is going to go on for decades. It could get vastly worse, I think, because of the age structure of the population and the fact that it's been declining. It doesn't have as many juvenile females now as it should have. I also agree with Tina that ultimately it's going to be a social decision. How do we view the world that we're living in? What world do we want to pass on to our next generation? And do we want killer whales to be here? It will take decades to effect a recovery here, and this decision is important. I would encourage you to think about encouraging NOAA just to go forward with this investigation. There are a lot of details that they will have to go over. They'll all be scrutinized carefully. You've heard lots of good ideas from here. And so my message to you, I guess, would be that encourage NOAA to continue with their investigation into this possibility. They will do a thorough job of looking at the alternatives, and then we can see where we go from there. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Emily Schaller?
Hello, my name is Emily Schaller. I've lived on San Juan Island since 2012 and worked for San Juan Safaris and San Juan Outfitters here. I am opposed to the whale protection zone. I do think that, everyone's heart is in the right place, but I think this is a misallocation of time and funds that could be going towards salmon recovery and bettering the slow zone that is already in place. That whale protection zone is such a minimal part of these animals' habitat that trying to narrow it down to 1 mile off the west side of San Juan Island seems ridiculous to me when you have thousands and thousands of miles that these animals are traveling in and utilizing for foraging. In my brief time here on San Juan Island, working out on the boats, I have seen the distribution and travel patterns change every summer with these animals, and the biggest thing that they're changing for is salmon. Years of high salmon abundance, we see them along the west side more often, we see them along Stewart Island more often, we see them here more often. This past summer, which was a low salmon year, we did not encounter southern residents nearly as often as other years. We were seeing transient orcas, and these guys were looking at, all over the place in this area, and that tiny little finite zone just cannot represent the actual area that these animals move in and call home. And the biggest thing is that salmon population, and if we're not able to put funds and time into salmon recovery, it doesn't matter whether or not there's a no-go zone on the west side. If there's not salmon, they won't be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori? Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Saccio, and I own Earthbox Inn and Spa and Bird Rock Hotel, and have lived here for 16 years and been active in the visitor service industry. I didn't come today prepared to speak, but I feel compelled to after hearing the comments in the room. I agree that I think everybody in this room has both an emotive reason to protect the whales, as our first speaker addressed, and then many of us have an economic interest in doing so. And that includes us in the visitor services industry. And I think that this somewhat stab-in-the-dark approach to trying something is a great idea, but I don't think it's very well thought out. I think it needs to be thought out. Is this the best and first place that we should be expending our efforts in here? This is going to sound self-serving, but the economic impacts of this would be huge and immediate. There would be people put out of jobs, and this would have a ripple effect throughout the economy that I think is very hard to predict, but I can tell you that it would be huge. And it is in my interest to make sure that those whales keep coming back year after year. So I'm going to do everything that I can to help do that. And I don't think this is starting at the right end of the spectrum. I think that from what I've read from the science, that it comes from the things that people have mentioned already in the room, which is salmon, and it's the noise of the bigger vessels that are traveling through there. And I can tell you, as somebody who lives on the west side, I actually get woken up in the middle of the night from the tankers who are going by. That has to have an impact on the whales, I would see. And that I caution you from just doing something right now without thinking about its long-term impacts and how if we do this now, I believe that gives other people a tool to say, well, we don't need to do something bigger because we're already doing something to whales. So we don't need to go after the shipping industry, or we don't need to worry about cutting down dams. If we do this, it might put in legislation that makes it harder to do something that we find out later is better, in fact, for the whales. So let's take a little more time now and figure out what we can do and do things that the PWWA is saying right now they're willing and active to do, which is have a slow-go zone. And then, as other people have said, let's start after the salmon recovery. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you. A little pen skipping here. can't read the first name, begins with H. Dirksema?
It may be in the other room.
Yeah, I can't read it either.
We're getting people up from the other room.
I'm H. Dirksema. No, I'm kidding. My name's Andy. I'm against it. I'm just going to start out by saying I'm against this, and I want to think of it on a personal term. Several of us have gone to college and we put a ton of money into getting our education, and we're out of college 6 years down the road and we realize, whoa, we threw $100,000 plus at an education, and I'm not even using it. I found a completely different scenario in life that I want to follow, and I'm concerned that this situation is going to provide the same thing. We're going to put a ton of money and effort into this, and we're going to tank the economy on the island, and a few years down the road we're going to realize, oh shit, it didn't do anything. I really think that we need to address what the whales really need, which is salmon. And I'd love to see the focus go there. I'd even encourage a slow go zone, but I really think that the focus needs to move away from this 1% of area that they travel in to really address other helpful issues. Thanks. Dirksema?
Mind if we just call you H?
H is fine.
Okay. Michelle Alway?
Hi, my name is Micheline Halliday. Thanks for letting us be here. I really don't know what to say over all that. All I say is I am for this because it takes all of the things. It takes salmon recovery. It takes stopping the noise of the tankers. They wake me up at night in my bed. I face south. I see all this. I've counted 28 boats around the Orcas, following them up and down all day. I've reported to NOAA some boats harassing Dall's porpoises. I mean, I see this stuff. I don't know if this is going to work, but I want to find out if it works. Because I can't make the salmon appear this month. I can't make the tankers go away. And I just don't want to assign money to it. The orcas are gone. This county will lose tons of jobs and the industry in this island. I guess my vote is just for the orca. And I want to try this, and I want to hope it works, and I want this to be a work in progress where all things get considered and the orca is first. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies on people's names too. I'm going to blame it on the pen, the sign up. I'm going to blame it on the sign up pen.
It was Skippy.
Katie Fleming.
Okay, hi, I'm Katie Fleming. I work at Friends of the San Juans as well, and I want to say thank you so much for all that you're doing to listen to what the community is saying today, but also thank you to you and to a lot of the people I see in this room today for your work in salmon recovery, for your work in making sure we can do everything we can to minimize shipping impacts. That's a lot of what I do at Friends of the San Juans, working on the big ships and the fossil fuel export and all those things, but this continues to be one thing that I hear and I hear about that I want to do something about with that we could do tomorrow, you know, and like Micheline said, this is one thing we could do tomorrow to try to see. We owe it to the whales to see what we can do to protect them, to protect their habitat, and there's nothing else that can be so immediate that could potentially be such an immediate benefit. And that was your question at the beginning of this, is will the benefits of this outweigh any negative impacts to our community? And it very well could. You know, the economic piece is huge. I totally get that. And I get certainly where everyone is coming from talking about their worries about the economy. But if our whales go, that's it. That's really when people are going to stop coming. So this 1 mile or this zone, however miles it could end up being, maybe it's a small percentage of their habitat, but it's an important place. We know that. That's why there's a whale watch park there, because that is a consistent place that people see them. It's worth a try, in my opinion, and it sounds like my coworkers. I echo all they said in talking about the science behind this too, and how this really could help. I've lived in San Juan County for 4.5 years. Besides my job at Friends, I'm a mother to 2 young children. It just breaks my heart to think about them not being around the whales. That's why I'm here. That's why I moved to Western Washington 14 years ago, to be close to the whales. And I'm so lucky that the work that I do, I hope positively impacts them, and that's why I want to talk to you today about supporting something. I think having, like Kyle said, a larger conversation about how this can work best for our community is really important, but we need to have the conversation. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a brief minute and interject how much I appreciate everybody spending the time to come here, and how valuable people's opinions are, and the breadth of the issues that people have brought up. I just think it's great. So thank all of you guys. I just wanted to take a 10-second break to say that. I'm really impressed with everybody's presentation, the amount of thought and heart that they put in everything. Next, we've got Jane Wentworth.
Thank you. My name's Jane Wentworth, and I live in the Hannah Heights community on the southwest side of the island. And I have the privilege of being able to watch the orcas swim by, especially in the early mornings when no one else knows they're there. And I'm very happy when I see that. I've learned a lot here. I really appreciate having the opportunity to participate in this public meeting, because I'm learning a lot, and it's really confusing to me. But obviously there's no single, simple solution to this. But I'm also extremely concerned about the increased risk of oil spills, and the increased shipping traffic, and the lack of salmon, and the vessel noise, and the harassment. All of those are really important issues. But in my heart, I really feel like having some place of refuge for these animals, after all these years since they've been listed as an endangered species, we owe them something. We owe them a place to be able to feel protected and get away from some of this stuff. And I don't know how big it needs to be or where it needs to be, and I understand the impacts that it has on economical interests here too, but I think we need to work something out here, because I really feel that it's one of the pieces of this, the solution. So I really urge you to support and move this protection zone forward in whatever way needs to work. We need to work it out. Thank you.
I just want a clarification. You don't have two Brian Budermans here with two different spellings. Is that true? That's correct. I got signed up twice. Apologies. We could have folks.
Yeah, turn your mic on there.
Thank you. Brian, I was just kind of joking with you there. Ben Bama?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity for the public input. I'm Ben Bama, resident of San Juan Island, and I'm just going to speak from my heart here. I want to say that I support the whale protection zone, not instead of salmon recovery or instead of addressing boat noise and speed, but in addition to those things. And I feel we are in a unique opportunity here where we live to have some impact on protecting some of the jewels of our planet that are endangered. And when we look back on this, and we almost always get the opportunity to look back, can we say that we did everything we could. Thank you.
Ben, what are you the president of? Sorry?
Resident.
Oh, resident. Okay.
He was elected by one of the biggest margins. Ken Christensen, please.
He must be in the other room.
In the other room, well, I think at this point we might have mostly people from the other room.
We have 2 additional rooms. We have the overflow room plus the other room over here.
Wow. Okay. And Ken, I'm just going to, just so that we can proceed here, we have Greg Hurdle and
Greg Hertel. Boy, I have no idea. Nathan or Crampy?
Gretchen Cramp.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Kind of the next 2 up on deck, and what's the other term? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Ken Christensen. I'm the manager for Snug Harbor Resort, longtime resident. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Not one of my fortes. Oppose this no-go zone. Let's get real, folks. The whales aren't going to be around at all if we don't give them something to eat. You want to help today? Go buy a fishing license. Let's work on getting something for the whales to feed on. Then let's think about a no-go zone. We can shut down Puget Sound, San Juan's. Still not going to do anything. Let's get them something to eat. Thanks. Easy.
Thank you. Greg Hertel.
Greg Hertel. I've been a resident since 1974, and during that time I've been in the water most of the time. Pleasure boater, sailboat, powerboat. I was a commercial gill netter for 10 years, fished off the salmon banks down there. Drove whale watch boats 1 year, and currently own a small tour boat. We do scenic tours rather than whale watch. I'm not in favor of the no-go zone as we see it up here. I'm afraid that bad laws will drive out good behavior, and this law is going to be unenforceable. It's going to be the confusion of recreational boats transiting, commercial fishing, Native American fishing, all the other activities that go on out there. Without the enforcement, it's not going to work, and we won't have the enforcement. I like the idea of the go slow zone, the bubble around the whales, because that travels with them. That's a lot easier to spot and covers more of the area than the current proposal up here. The gentleman from Department of Fish and Wildlife, I want to say that I've noticed a real change in behavior when we see enforcement. I've come on the scene a couple of times where I was transiting through, and everybody is just way back and behaving themselves. And I've told my passengers, yes, that law must be around now. The fish cops are out there because of the change in behavior. So I would love to see the enforcement stepped up, because I think that would work for everybody. Again, if you have a law that's unenforceable and people become scofflaws for that reason, then that carries over into other activities too, and people start just ignoring the other rules that are out there. So I'm in favor of the go slow zone as was proposed, and not in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Gretchen?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Gretchen Cramp. I live on Orcas Island, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity to call this invitation of our community to stand and speak. We need more of this, and if that's part of this, to invite a continuing conversation about this, I say yes. Seeing our islands, having lived here for 29 years, and being involved with Leadership San Juan Island, and being involved with Orcasong Farm and the Orcasong Institute on Orcas, we've named this emerging institute Orcasong because of the wisdom keepers that our orca whales are. They're part of our community just as much as we are. And how we can protect them in their vulnerable state is how I think we protect all of our citizens in their vulnerable state. So I'm in favor of us staying open to seeing what we can do. I've heard the proposal of a go-slow zone as being a good idea. Then why is it not being done? Because that would be in service. And how can we, in service to our social and sacred response, stand for our citizens? And our resident whales are part of our community. So I thank you for hearing us, and I invite you to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got on my list. I have 4 more from either the overflow rooms. Not sure if there's anybody who arrived late who wants to have a chance to speak, but that's probably an option because we do seem to have enough time, and this has gone very well for us. Next, I've got Jacob, Molly, Corey, and Monica. And young lady in the back raised her hand to speak. Why don't you want to come up?
There's somebody coming in right now.
Okay. Great.
Thank you. I'm Carrie Koski. I was working with the Whale Museum for nearly 20 years, helped develop the Soundwatch program in the early 90s, and helped develop the voluntary no-go zone that currently exists. I want to encourage the dialogue and conversation. I think this is a much better climate than the previous round, and I would encourage people to stay engaged. So with that, I would really encourage you to recommend continuing the dialogue. I think it's really important. If you take a look at some of the maps up there, I can assume that that top map is some data from the Soundwatch program. If you were to look at the Whale Museum's long-term data set on use of killer whales and other whales in this area, it's going to overlap that map an awful lot. I can assume that that is vessels. And there's a lot of congestion of vessels that overlaps where whales are, and it occurs largely in our county. And I think it's important for us to look at what we can do to help alleviate some of those pressures and maybe cumulative effects that are happening in our waters in areas that we're encouraging those activities, whether it's tourism or fishing, recreational boating, going back and forth to our favorite islands. And it's occurring here, and I think we have an opportunity to really come up with some solutions. The current proposal in front of you may not be the most elegant solution, but it's doing its job, which is to try to bring us together to have those conversations to come up with better solutions. So I would encourage you to keep it on the table. Thanks.
Thank you. Jacob?
Should I check the other rooms? I don't think Jacob is going to.
They can hear. There's a screen in each.
All right. Is Molly, you want to switch, go right to Molly?
Hello, my name's Molly Elder. I've been a kayak guide for the past 3 years. I am a resident of San Juan Island. I'm just going to try and be really short, and I'm going to be kind of redundant, but I think it's important that we're having this conversation and continuing this conversation, like Carrie said, would be very effective for our community and bringing all the different solutions together and talking about them. Salmon recovery is the #1 solution that I think all of our efforts, energy, and funding should go into. Riparian restoration, removing the Snake River Dam, and more threateningly right now is an oil spill in the Salish Sea. And talking more about the Kinder Morgan pipeline and how we can stop that from happening, because it is an immediate threat to the whales and the salmon and all of our livelihoods and everybody who lives in the Salish Sea. I am not in favor of the no-go zone, and I hope we can continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Newberry?
Hi, my name's Carrie, and I manage Crystal Seas Kayaking, and I've been out here for the last 11 years, and I just want to share that I am also against this proposed whale protection zone, or as I like to refer to it, the no boat zone. As a sea kayaker, boats are not necessarily our best friends, but with that said, I don't believe that asking them not to be in a small area of the San Juans is going to really make a difference for everybody's beloved orca whales. I think the funds and time and energy of everybody could be better allocated to resources that will have a bigger effect on the whales. And so I just want to voice my opinion as a representative from the sea kayak industry and say that I think this is a huge waste of everybody's time talking about a no boat zone, and it would be better allocated to, like others have proposed, a slow go zone or salmon recovery or a lot of other resources. So thank you.
Thank you. Monica?
Good morning. My name is Monica Whelan Shields, and I'm the president of the Orca Behavior Institute, which is a nonprofit behavioral research group that focuses here in the San Juans on the southern resident killer whales. And we are opposed to this proposed whale protection zone. If you're going to have a whale protection zone, it's really important that it's in a meaningful location and is excluding the right types of activities. And we don't see the evidence that this proposed location is key to the whales. Like for the northern residents, there's the rubbing beach that they have up there. It was really clear that that protection zone made sense. Back in the 1980s, published research has shown that this proposed area was an area where the whales spend about 50% of their time foraging. From the data that we've collected in the last couple of years, they're spending less than 10% of the time that they're in this zone foraging. So we just don't see the evidence that this particular zone makes sense to protect. Additionally, this proposal is really targeted specifically to whale watch boats. We also don't think that that makes sense because, as others have suggested, noise is the biggest potential vessel impact on these whales. And if we address only the whale watching fleet and not the shipping traffic and the fishing boats and everything else in the area, we really won't be doing much to make a quiet zone for these whales. So if we are going to continue discussions of vessel protection zones, we support the PWWA's proposal for a slow go zone around the whales. I just wanted to remind everyone, and I think everyone knows this, but we spent a couple years after the endangered listing of these whales talking about vessel effects. And action was taken at that time in the form of the vessel regulations. And it was acknowledged that we were taking actions on what was identified as the lowest hanging fruit. That's something we could take immediate action on, and we did. But these whales have been listed as endangered for 11 years, and so far that's the major concrete action item that has been taken, is those vessel regulations. And it isn't easy. We can't solve the salmon issues overnight, but we have to start having those difficult conversations about how we can make those decisions that will help the salmon recover. As scientists at the Orca Behavior Institute, we wholly support the precautionary principle as a way to protect an endangered species. But the reality of it is there are very limited resources available to allocate towards any sort of recovery measures, and as others have alluded to, those funds and resources might be even more limited in the years ahead. So what I personally am very concerned about is that we will take an action such as this, and it will really just be sort of a token effort where we will feel like we're doing something, but it may in fact not help the whales or give us the recovery measures that we're looking for. And with limited time and resources available, we really need to be focusing on the salmon issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless Jacob comes up, that's everybody we have signed up. I'll ask again if we have other people that would like to speak. And what I'll do is you guys can come on up, and I'll just let you sign up here as you come up to speak.
What was on the list?
Oh, yes.
Hobbs Buchanan. And Jeff Reedman.
I'm sorry, I check for my
That's all right. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for this. This is fantastic. I'm Hobbs Buchanan. I own San Juan Island Whale and Wildlife Tours. I'm going to stick with Ken Balcom, and I oppose this this plan that Orca Relief has put in place. Without question, our orcas do need our help. But what's killing the orcas is the root cause I think we need to address, and that is PCBs leaking from our landfills, stormwater runoff, poor erosion control practices, non-organic farming, livestock runoff. We still got livestock marching around in False Bay Creek. Surfactants. They just caught, I think it was a couple of years ago, because some scientists caught a few salmon down in the Puget Sound, and they found it was laced with Prozac, an antidepressant, from people flushing drugs down a toilet. I think these are some of the issues that we have to address. And my feeling is not one scientist can help these whales. There's only one thing that can help these whales, and that's us. Whale watch boats often get bad press when they should be getting good press, because we educate people. My customers leave my boat, and when they get home, they're going to think twice about what they're putting down their drains and their toilets at home. There's a lot of biodegradable products out now, and they actually work. The bottom line is, our orcas need clean and healthy salmon, and I don't think NOAA is really addressing that. I feel like Orca Release Plan is really nothing but an assault on the tourist industry, and has the potential to severely hurt the island economy. And it really is not going to help the whales whatsoever. When I first moved here 16 years ago, there was kelp forests everywhere. I don't see that anymore. I think we really need to make our oceans healthy again. Our oceans are dying. It's not just the orcas. If we look after these little guys, everything else will look after itself. But we're not going to do that if we don't address stormwater runoff. Is huge. The ferry system should be held responsible for their stormwater runoff in both countries, Canada and US. So that's my 2 pennies worth. Thank you very much. This has been great.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Level Pratt. I'm a resident here on San Juan Island, and I really appreciate the Marine Resources Committee taking this time to hear from the community on this issue. And I think everybody here wants to do something that will make a difference for our resident orca whales. And I think you're hearing a lot of good ideas here today, and I think what's most important is to think about what can San Juan County do, what can make a difference, what's enforceable. I don't know the answer to that, whether it's the go slow zone, it's the no-go zone that's currently being considered by NOAA. But I do think that there's opportunities for the Marine Resources Committee to advocate for actions that the San Juan County can take. And I want to bring your attention to one thing. People here today have talked about commercial shipping and the impact of that vessel noise and the risk of oil spills and accidents that impact our resident orca whales. And there's an expansion proposal in Vancouver Harbor for the Centerm container terminal. And this expansion would both increase the size of the container terminals calling at this, the container vessels calling at this terminal, and it would also increase the number by 60 a year. And in their application or public comment process, they talk about impacts to Vancouver Harbor only. They talk about how only a couple of whales come into Vancouver Harbor, and it's not going to have any impact on the whales. And they're not considering the entire vessel route going out through Georgia Strait, coming down through Boundary Pass and Harrow Strait, and out the Strait of Juan de Fuca, going right through the critical area, the critical habitat for our resident orcas. So there's an opportunity to comment right now on that project, and I can pass on the information to anyone who's interested. But raising the awareness of the impact to our resident orca whales with all the various shipping projects that are now in the process of being proposed and have opportunities for public comment is one way that this committee can advocate for something that to raise awareness for the waterways that are impacted by major shipping. And I really encourage you to look for the best way for San Juan County to make a difference for our whales in a way that can be enforced and in a way that can benefit them. and recognize that the bigger picture of addressing salmon abundance and providing them with the food that they need is something that I really appreciate the work that this committee does on that. But sometimes those issues are beyond the control of what the county can do. And so recognize where you can make a difference and where you can influence, and take the influence you can, but take actions that you can do that can make a difference. So thank you very much for your work on this committee and considering all the input you've had here today.
Thank you, Level. Unless somebody comes running through the door shouting, I guess that's our public comment period for today. I repeat myself to thank everybody for participating in this. It seemed really positive to me, and I'll repeat what Megan said. It's obvious to me that everybody does have the same goals in mind, and that's really important. I'd also like to repeat the importance of the issue that Byron, our salmon recovery coordinator, addressed. I don't know that I heard a person come up today and didn't speak about the importance of salmon recovery, and the other people who also address the other aspects of what's going on in terms of vessel traffic and things like that. Byron, do you want to give us any other reminders about what a person who is interested in participating in the salmon recovery process might do?
So there was some comments about how important NOAA is to salmon recovery. Actually, the feds spend about a third of our salmon recovery. We get about a third of our salmon recovery dollars from the feds.
We can't hear you in the background.
Okay. Oh, that's right. They're in the other room. Maybe Byron, come up here.
Okay.
So the room can see you.
I appreciate everybody.
So we get about a third of our dollars from the feds and 2/3 from the state. The microphone's on. I have to point my face towards the microphone now. And everybody knows what's going on at the federal level. So, and that is who knows what's going to happen there. But we do have right now. It's the issue is with state funding, and the state is struggling to figure out how to do that. There's folks that want to put a zero next to salmon recovery, and so I'm not sure that's going to happen. But it is possible that sort of the framework that we've developed in terms of people and projects could unravel a bit if we don't continue the efforts with salmon recovery. So it is important to reach out and express your voices in this democracy. I have there's a bunch of people up here that has a bunch of information for you, and I can talk to you afterwards if you want more information. And I think that's it. Is there anything specific you wanted me to address?
Hearing everybody say salmon and the importance of that, I thought this is a great captive audience to repeat that information. Thank you, Byron.
Yeah, and so we here for what we focus on is forage fish, the food of salmon, and it's herring, salmons, and surf smelt, and so if we can provide the deli for the salmon provide the deli for the orcas. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Byron. At this point, do we have any of our fellow members who want to bring anything to the table?
Yes, Terry. Just wanted to mention that the MRC and Salmon Recovery meeting, next one, is scheduled for April 4th, and you're welcome to provide public input on that as well. Okay.
Yeah. And I think, yes, where this goes in terms of the Marine Resources Committee, we've provided our primary function here, but that may evolve too. So with that being our agenda, any of the other committee members want to make a motion?
Yes.
Or
move to adjourn at this point.
Move to adjourn. Great. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.